Yes, we're live. Hello, everyone, and this is a surprise. We haven't planned this, and we have just come together this morning to celebrate, really, and to let people know who may not be aware of Michael Ronn's wonderful new book, 150 Self-Publishing Questions Answered. And I'm here with the man himself. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Orna. Happy Monday, August 17th, or whatever day
Monday.
we're recording. Who knows? I don't remember anymore.
It is indeed Monday, August 17th, and we're here because you have written and published this wonderful book for ALLi, whereby you've pulled together all the questions, the most common questions, the most pressing questions that have been asked by our members over the, how many years are we doing this now? 4,
Oh,
5,
yeah,
something like
it's
that?
been a while. Yeah.
It's been years, and you've been carefully compiling the questions month in, month out, and so had a ringside seat, you might say, in terms of knowing what self-publishers really kind of want to know about, and you've compiled it into this really comprehensive. One of my favorite lines from the review so far is this book, 150 questions, self-publishing questions answered, answers far more than 150 questions. I thought that was brilliant, because it does, of course, en route to answering the 150 that you picked out. There's just loads and loads of wisdom and experience and observation packed in. So first of all, thank you so much for doing the book and for making such a fantastic book. And today what we're going to do is take 10 of those questions and talk through, the answers that are in the book, but also building a little bit on those answers and maybe a little bit about your own experience or whatever. And these are the questions, I think, the most popular questions from the book, the ones that you get asked the most often, and they're a balance of practical, very practical sort of questions, and then more general. So shall we just leap in? I'll ask the
Absolutely.
questions
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
you do the answers. Okay, so the first one is, should I write to market or should I write to my passion?
Yeah, this is a very common question that I get, and I know that we've gotten it a lot on the show. And we should probably define the term right to market first. So, right to market means looking at what's selling on the marketplace and then writing a book that looks like that. So, for example, if all the books that are selling in the urban fantasy genre are about vampires that have a certain particular skill, then you would write a book that is very similar to that, with a vampire that has a very particular skill with a little twist on what you're doing. So the point is that you're writing a book that fits what is already selling, and it fits reader expectations so that your book is more likely to sell. That's essentially writing to market, versus if you wanted to write an urban fantasy about a mermaid, where maybe mermaids aren't selling, right? And so, but if you might be really passionate about that mermaid book, but the vampire book might possibly, you don't ever really know for sure, might possibly make more money. So that's writing to market. My thought on it is I've always told people to try to find the happy medium. So balance what you like to write versus what is going to make you money. And sometimes you can find that sweet spot. Other times, it could be that the book that you write, that's your passion, might not sell very well at all. But the thing to remember is that that's okay, because books are cyclical. I mean, who knew before Twilight a few years ago that vampires would make such a comeback? And it seems like vampires are they come in and then they're out, and then they're in and then they're out. So the book that you write, even if it doesn't do as well as you want it to today, there's always a long-term potential, because as indie authors, we have long-term, we want to be in this for the long term, right? We want to build long-term sustainable careers. And so a book that you write today could be very popular 15 years from now.
Absolutely. And I think there's a distinction here between wearing your writer hat and wearing your publishing hat. And it's where those, have these kind of conflicted conversations with myself, and I think every indie author does, where you're wearing these different hats and you're saying, having an argument out with yourself. But sometimes a book just has to be written, and then sometimes the market doesn't know what it wants until it actually receives it. A lot of authors, if they were waiting and just writing to market, we would be definitely the poorer in terms of books. But I do think as indie publishers, we have this fantastic opportunity to balance these two things, as you're saying, and to allow ourselves to be. I know that I've learned a huge amount from my readers in terms of what they're looking for, what their expectations are. It has really fed back into me and what I write next. And that dialogue with readers is really, really useful in shaping what we produce as publishers, and that feeds back into what we produce as writers. I think what we want to produce even sometimes.
Yep.
Okay, so next question. Should I use a pen name? This is very live for me at the moment. Should I use a pen name?
Yes, this is probably without a doubt one of the most common questions we get on the show. And the answer that I often give is, what is your purpose? Because there's so many different reasons to use a pen name. Like, for example, I use a pen name. Michael Ronn is not my real name. And the reason I do that is because I have a career in the insurance industry. And if potential clients Google me, I don't necessarily want them to see my books. It's not that I'm embarrassed by my books or anything, but I want them to see what it is that they're searching for from an insurance perspective when they look me up. And so having a pen name creates a really good separation in terms of what it is that I want to create. Now, another consideration is, what is it that you're writing? Because if you're writing erotica or something a little steamy, sometimes writers don't want that name to be associated, or they don't want their real name to be associated with that. Now, some writers, they don't care. Some writers take the approach, well, this is my full name, or this is my real name, so therefore I'm going to be proud of whatever it is that I write, and I don't necessarily care about the separation. So, do you have a professional consideration? Do you have a personal consideration? And then another thing to think about with pen names is, for example, in some genres, people might take a pen name to blend in a little bit better. So right, wrong, or indifferent. Sometimes, a female might take on a male looking, or a name that doesn't necessarily have gender connotations if the genre is all male authors, for example. Right, wrong, or indifferent, right? I mean, and there's so many different types of situations where that would come up, but those are the reasons to consider it. There's no right or wrong answer, only what's best for you. But something to consider with pen names is, if you do have a pen name, it is something that you're going to have to maintain for a long time. So if you have multiple pen names like I do, just keep in mind that's technically multiple websites, multiple Amazon profiles. So it might be easier long-term to have everything under one name if the maintenance is going to be an issue for you.
Great. I'll just talk a little bit about my experience as well. At the moment, for convenience, used to put everything under Orna Ross, but actually it causes trouble in the retail stores in terms also of your also boughts and your comparable authors, which can actually affect sales on stores. Now, that hasn't been a huge issue for me because I do a lot of direct selling, but I'm keen now to start, focusing in on the retail stores as well. And when I came to do this, it was clear that people who buy historical family murder mysteries are not interested necessarily in my poetry, and are not really necessarily interested in the author guides for ALLi that I write, in terms of nonfiction, and the business planning guides that I write. So I have now done what a number of indie authors are doing. You've kind of done it as well, I know. I've stuck a little initial between the Orna and the Ross. So the non-fiction writer writes Orna, under Orna A. Ross now. And I have kept the one name for the poetry and novels, because sometimes as you alluded to, you're just hit by convenience. I really can't, I don't have time or interest to maintain completely separate names for poetry and fiction. Though if I was a full-time author, I think I possibly would. So yeah, there is that consideration also, what happens in the stores in terms of your comparables and also bots.
Yeah, that's such a great point. The discoverability piece is really key because, yeah, what do you want your readers to see when they Google you for the first time? And that was one of the issues that I had very early on, because I'm in a very similar boat to you, Orna, where I have poetry, I have fiction, I have nonfiction for writers. And how do you create clear choices for your readers when they Google it? So that's the key. If you have one pen name and you write multiple things like we do, how do you create clear choices so that when someone comes to your website, within the first 10 seconds of being on your website, they understand what you write and what they should buy?
Yeah,
That's
and my
trade-off.
readers certainly didn't. I know that it was very confusing, and they would just kind of go away, I think. And some of them found their way to what they need because they were determined, but that's not what you want. You
Yeah.
want it to be really, really easy for them, and you also want to be there among your genre, with the other authors who are writing what you're writing, and to be part of that world. And it's very hard to be properly part of all those worlds if you're doing them all under one name.
Yep.
So yeah, while it seems like a very simple, short question, it's actually got a very long answer. Okay.
Yes.
Next question is about beta readers, or beta readers, as some people call them. Where do I find? Well, first of all, maybe just for those who may not know what a beta reader is, could you fill them in, and where can they be found?
Yes. So a beta reader is someone who reads your book before it goes to an editor and gives you feedback about the book. So they could give you feedback about the story, feedback about the character development, feedback about maybe some of the spelling and grammar issues that they catch. But the beta reader's goal is that this person is a reader. This is not an editor. This is someone who is a reader that ideally looks very similar to someone who's potentially going to buy your book. And the point is that you can get some reader feedback, and that can potentially, in some cases, be more valuable than editing, because they're going to give you a good idea of where your book fits in the market, and are you satisfying readers? Does your book make sense? And they're unsung heroes of writers, because without beta readers, we'd be in a pretty tough situation. I think a lot of writers would be. And so the place where you can find these people is there's a number of places you can find them. The easiest place is there's lots of beta reader communities on any Facebook or any social media network. So you can do a search on Facebook. There's beta reader communities on Goodreads. You can Google for beta reader communities, and there's all sorts of communities out there. That's the first way that you can find them. The easiest way that you can find them, if you happen to have an audience already, is to just simply send out a request to your email list, or to your own Facebook community, or to your own social media circles. That's the best way to find beta readers, because those are people who are already familiar with your work and are probably already invested in what you've already done. So that would be, in my opinion, Michael Ron's opinion, the best place to find them. But if you don't have anyone currently, then the communities are a good place to find it. A bit of a contrarian place that you can also find these readers that I don't know if I'm the only person that does this. It's a little weird. But you can also find paid beta readers. There are more and more readers now. This is a trend who will basically take money to read your book and provide it to you by deadline. And they charge a reasonable fee. You can find them on places like Fiverr, even freelancer websites like Upwork.com, and you can post what you need. And the great thing about paid beta readers is that they'll often read the book faster and turn it around faster, because that's one of the issues of beta readers, is that they're volunteers. They typically have lives. They've got other things they're working on, and so sometimes they can fall off the map, and that's just kind of how it is, And a paid beta reader may be a beta reader that can meet their deadlines a lot faster. So that's where I would start.
Fantastic. All right, very comprehensive. So next question, do I need an ISBN?
The answer to that question, and Orna, you jump in as you see fit. The answer to that question depends on the format of the book and what your goals are. So if you're writing an ebook, the answer would be no, you don't, you're not technically required to have an ISBN to publish it, but having an ISBN can be helpful, mainly because not having an ebook ISBN kind of contributes to some of the problems that we have as self-publishers, in that we have kind of a shadow industry. So a lot of our book sales aren't tracked, but that's because we don't have ISBNs. That's how the industry tracks them. So for ebooks, the answer is no, you don't need one. It is still recommended if you can afford it. For paperbacks, you do need an ISBN to publish, but many of the print on demand places will provide you a free ISBN as a result of publishing. Now, our stance at ALLi is to purchase your own ISBNs because you're in control and it's going to list you as the publisher of record. Whereas if you don't do that and you take a free ISBN from Amazon, then that goes on Amazon's results, and so your book is just a part of a sea of different authors, and while it doesn't create any major problems for you, it's just about control, and how do you control your career and all of that. So for a print book, the answer is yes, you do need one. You can take a free one, but we always recommend that you use your own one.
Yeah, and I would add to that, as you said, it's kind of ALLi's thing to recommend that as authors we do. As Michael said, it's about being on the record is part of it. So as an association, we actually don't like when we see figures going out about indie authors that are clearly inaccurate. But without ISBNs, which is what the industry uses to track us, we're untrackable. Also, though, libraries and other other book buyers, who want to supply bookstores, this is where the ISBN becomes very important.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just selling directly on the online retailer is less important. But the moment you have an intermediary of any kind, how they're going to distinguish, say, your ebook edition from your print edition, from your audiobook edition, is through the ISBN. So if they want to order your audiobook for their bookstore, or they want to order your ebook for their library, they actually can't do that if you don't have an ISBN. And if you have used one of the services ISBNs, they can, and that problem is eliminated. But the problem with using a services ISBN is what happens if that service goes out of business? Things do change. So we're always recommending, and you alluded to this earlier, Michael, the long view. So things that, short-term expediency is one thing, but building an author business, very long-term endeavor, takes many years to write and publish enough books to be doing well. And it's just good to have the fabric and the structure clear and simple and future proof. So from that point of view, we would recommend that you use an ISBN for each edition of your book.
Yep. And also, right, wrong, or indifferent, there are some bookstores and intermediaries who won't even take a look at you if Amazon is listed as the publisher of record on your ISBN too.
That's well worth mentioning, actually, yes, because they see Amazon KDP as particularly as their competitor. And so as a self-protection, they're not going to take a book that has an Amazon ISBN on it, whereas they may be extremely supportive of an indie author. So yeah, lots to think about there too. You see, these questions, they sound so simple, but actually nothing simple in self-publishing.
Never.
Okay, how do you balance writing and marketing? And this is a kind of a time management question too, because I always like to ask Michael Ronn time management questions because he does so much with his time. How do you balance writing and marketing?
Very carefully. So it depends on where you are in your author journey. Because when you haven't published a book, then the majority of your time is focused on creating that book. And it should be, because if you don't have a book, you don't have a ticket to the ball game, so to speak, right? You can't, they won't even let you in the stadium. So your first focus, if you have no book, is to write that first book. So yes, you can never start marketing too soon, but at the end of the day, if you got to get that book out there. Once you write your first book and you publish your first book, that's when it becomes a true challenge, because then you have to balance writing the next book versus marketing the book that you already have. So here's kind of Michael Ron's kind of opinion on this. It depends on what you write. So let's say that you have a book one in a series. That's your first book. You're probably better served writing your next book before you spend a whole lot of time on your marketing. Now, I would still do a book launch. I would still let people know it exists. I would still focus on building your mailing list, and I would focus on letting people know it's out there on social media. But I would spend probably 80% of my time writing the next book. Then when I have 2 or 3 books in that same series, then you can start spending, maybe for the launch of book 2 or 3, maybe for the first 2 weeks, 50% of your time marketing. So that way you've got a few books that you can send readers to, because readers probably aren't going to be that interested in just reading a book one. They want to have more, because think about it like this. If they read a book that they love, they're going to want to read the next book immediately, right? So you want to have multiple things to send them to. Now, if you're not writing a series, if you've just written a standalone, then different story. You probably do want to maybe start marketing that. So the rule of thumb that I've always abided by is, can you do one thing every day about marketing? So is there one thing you can do every single day to help you market the book and move it forward? That could be emailing 10 book bloggers to read your book, or putting together something in a putting together some nice graphics to share your book on social media. Doesn't matter what that is, but if you can just focus on one thing every day for marketing, that will help you and help keep you afloat.
Fantastic. Okay, controversial question next. Should I put my books in Kindle Unlimited?
All right. So this is another very, very common question. So Kindle Unlimited is Amazon's program that allows you to enroll your books exclusively on Amazon, so that they are sold exclusively on Amazon in ebook format, in exchange for additional visibility and additional marketing tools. So there's some different marketing tools that KDP Select has. I won't go into those because they always change, and I never know when people are listening to this. But there's no doubt that being in KDP Select does help your book potentially get discovered better by readers. Here's the problem with KDP Select and Kindle Unlimited by comparison, or by proxy. It's really only a small percentage of readers out there. It's very heavily weighted in the United States. That's where the lion's share of the readers are. But not everybody buys their book on Amazon in the rest of the world. So if you're enrolled in KDP Select, yes, it can be really lucrative. And yes, you can make a boatload of money if you got the right book, right? But that's not everybody. And also, what happens if one day Amazon makes a change to KDP Select that makes it no longer lucrative for you, and you've got to go off on your own? And it's just better. This is Michael Ron's opinion only, and I know I'm leading the witness here a little bit, but it's not a bad idea if it's your first book. First 2 books, get in there, get some visibility, use that to build a readership, and then after that, go wide. And go wide means publishing your book everywhere. So not just on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, on Kobo, on Google Play, anywhere and everywhere that will take your book. Try to publish there. And on your website, that's another big one, because at the end of the day, it takes a long time to build a readership outside of Amazon. And the sooner you start doing it, the better off and the more sustainable your career is going to be in the long run. So the answer is that there's nothing wrong with KDP Select. But just have a plan if you're in it, because you don't want to wake up one day and then realize, oh crap, what am I going to do now?
We actually have witnessed that with lots of authors over the years who have all their books in KDP Select. some changes made to the algorithm, and suddenly, you know, the income they had that was sustaining their families, maybe they just don't have it anymore, and they can't because Amazon doesn't share the reader lists or email. You know, they effectively have no business. They really are completely dependent and have to start from scratch again. It's extremely painful. Some can't start from scratch again, have to get jobs. So it is very risky to have all your books in KDP Select. Using KDP Select strategically, though, as Michael suggests, and having a book that you're using at a particular time to maybe be a leader, or maybe you do use it for 3 months when you bring the book out first, then go wide, or, you know, there are lots of different ways you can do it. But exclusivity generally is not a good rule of thumb for any business, and it's the same for indie authors. If I do put my book in KDP Select, next question, can I publish it anywhere else?
The answer is no. Now, remember, I have to clarify this, that KDP Select is for your ebook only, because sometimes we get questions, oh, well, what about my print book? No, it only applies to your ebook. So you can publish your print book anywhere you want. All right. But this applies to your ebook. So the answer is, if you publish your ebook in KDP Select, you cannot publish it anywhere else. That is part of the contract, because you are agreeing to be exclusive to Amazon. So if you publish your book on KDP Select and then it ends up on Google or it ends up on Apple, you're going to get a threatening letter. Hopefully you get a threatening letter, but you can get into a lot of trouble. So don't test them on that, because they've got very sophisticated bots, and it's just not, will create headaches for you. So you cannot publish your book anywhere else, unfortunately.
And that includes your own website.
Correct.
Which some authors don't realize sometimes. Okay, speaking of all those other book retailers, and I was really interested in what you were saying about, you know, the American market not being the entire market, and very much not being the entire market, and that other retailers being more prominent around the world. And also that I think it's worth saying that the US market is quite competitive and saturated, where there are lots and lots of markets around the world that are nascent and just coming up, and it's much easier to find a foothold. So in terms of going to all these other suppliers, should I use an ebook aggregator or go direct?
Yes. So an ebook aggregator is also like an ebook, also be known as like an ebook distributor. So Draft to Digital, Publish Drive, Smashwords, StreetLib, these are all aggregators. And what they do is they take your book and they publish it in many different places at the same time. Now, the benefit for you is that you only have to publish your book on one dashboard, or it minimizes the dashboards that you have to publish your book on. So it's easier to manage your sales, manage everything else, and they just take a small commission, right? So they can get your book into many different places, including many different retailers internationally that you would never be able to get your book into by yourself. So I recommend using aggregators to further reach. But if you have the ability to publish directly to a retailer like Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble, Michael Ron's opinion and ALLi stance, we align on this. Publish your book at the retailers directly, and then use the aggregators to expand your reach into places that you can't get. The reason I recommend that is because, one, you're going to make more commissions if you publish direct to a retailer. And then two, you're going to have more control over how the book looks. And then also there may some direct retailers may prioritize your book in terms of merchandising opportunities and advertising opportunities as well. So the answer is not an either or. The answer is to use both. I have my books published on all the retailers, major retailers direct, except for Apple. Apple is a bit of a challenge at the moment. And then I use Smashwords, I use Publish Drive, and then Draft to Digital, and they all have their different list of retailers that they can get your book into. So I use all the above.
Great. And yes, I use lots too. So Google Play, there's an issue that keeps coming up. It's a very practical issue, but we're just getting it all the time lately. So I thought I'd include it in the list. Google Play keeps discounting my ebook. What can I do?
Yes, so this is a frustration for people who first published their book on Google Play. It's an unpleasant surprise in many ways. So it's probably worth talking about how Google Play does things a little bit differently. Google Play follows what's called the wholesale model. They will discount your book in order to sell more copies of it. This is different than Amazon, who uses an agency model pricing, which basically the author is the agent and you select the price, and then Amazon simply takes a commission from the price. Now we're talking about ebooks here. We're talking about ebooks. Paperbacks, different story. Amazon will discount your paperbacks if they feel it's necessary. So the nature of Google's pricing is that no matter what price you set it at, Google is always going to sell it for less. So if you sell your book for $4.99, Google might discount to like $3.17. Now, that wouldn't normally be it's a problem because you want to sell your book at the right price. The problem is Amazon, because Amazon will price match your book because they want to be the lowest price. So while Amazon won't change the price of the book on Amazon that you choose to sell it at, if Amazon finds it cheaper somewhere else, they will change the price to wherever it is somewhere else. And so if you didn't intend for your book to be $3.17, it's going to be $3.17 on Amazon now. So that can become a problem for you. So the easiest way to do this is to simply raise the price on Google Play. So if you want to sell your book for $4.99 on period across the board, then you might try listing your book at like $6.75 on Google Play. So then what Google Play will do is they will slash the price down to somewhere around $4.99, and then you don't have to worry about the Amazon price matching. So you can experiment with this. The nice part about Google Play, if you go direct with them, is that they make fairly quick updates to their pricing. I mean, it takes minutes. So what you can do is put in a price that's higher, and then just wait a few minutes and see what it appears on your book page, and then just keep adjusting until it gets, maybe a few cents above where you want, so that the Amazon price matching won't kick in.
Great. And just expanding, slightly out from this question, just to say that it really is worth playing with price, and choose Michael's term, on the various retailers. They're not all the same in terms of how much your book should cost. And just because it costs a certain price on one outlet doesn't necessarily mean it needs to cost the same on another outlet. And Amazon is by far the most price sensitive outlet. You will possibly, and we've seen this with a number of people, and I have experienced it myself, where I've actually sold more books on Apple and Kobo by pricing more expensively than cheaper. So there's, there are two different perceptions among readers. One is, I want the cheapest, but I want the book the cheapest price. I want it discounted. I only buy free books or discounted books. I'm not interested. But there is another, quite a substantial tranche of readers who will look at a book that is priced at $1.99 or 99 cents and assume it's no good. So, and you find more of those kinds of readers on the other retailers. Amazon is known. It is, its promise to its buyers is that it is the lowest price out there, and therefore it attracts those kinds of readers. So it's definitely worth playing with your pricing and seeing what sort of response you get on other retailers, and not just automatically assuming, as you would, that if it's one price somewhere, it has to be the same price everywhere else. It doesn't. Okay, Michael, that's 10 out of the 150 questions. Tell people a little bit about the book, where it can be found. The audiobook's just come out. You narrated it yourself. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so absolutely. So the book is called 150 Self-Publishing Questions Answered, and it's ALLi's guide to writing, publishing, and book marketing tips that every indie author and poet needs to know. So the book applies equally to authors and poets It's a nice little selling point. And it's available in ebook, paperback, and audio. And I did narrate the audiobook. So if you like the audio that you hear now, you'll probably like the audiobook. It's professionally narrated, and it just came out on Audible. So it is now available on Audible. It is also available on Google Play audiobooks and anywhere you can find audiobooks these days. So if you listen to audiobooks on any retailer, you should be able to find it there. And you can find it on our website on self-publishingadvice.org or allianceindependentauthors.org as well. And just self-publishingadvice.org/guidebooks. And that will take you to the page where you can find it. And it's available on all retailers because, you know, we drink our own Kool-Aid here, you know, so we make sure that our book is available wide.
And of course, if you're an ALLi member, the ebook is included with your membership. So you just need to go to log in and navigate to guidebooks and you will find it there. And if you would like to have a copy in print, because it is that kind of reference book that is nice to have, it can be purchased, as Michael says, on our Self-Publishing Advice Centre. And I will say, because he's too modest to say it, that the reviews so far have been fantastic. All 5-star, I think. I haven't seen anything less than 5-star yet. And, you know, people are really getting the book and really appreciating it and finding the way. It's organized across the 7 stages of the publishing process. So they're divided up into editorial design, production, distribution, marketing, promotion, and rights sales. So whatever point of the publishing process you're in right now with whatever book you're working on right now, you just navigate to that chapter and all the important questions are answered there. So thank you so much for dropping in during the summer, during our summer break, to talk about the book, and hopefully we've spread the word to a few more readers who will benefit from it. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Orna. Take care, everybody.
We'll be back with our regular Q&A early in September. Bye-bye, everyone. Happy writing and happy publishing.
All right.